How's it going, YouTube? Coming at you today with another video, and today, guys, what to bring to you is a really big collab on the state of the game. We're going to be talking about Maxi, and then we're going to be talking a little bit about Power of the Element format, because I feel like these are all very big topics, especially every single time that the ban list comes around. We see a huge spike in price on Maxi, and then there's huge debate, so I really just want to have that really nice discussion today. Then we'll slip into the conversation about the current format and how we feel about all the different decks that are available to us and the different engines we're using now. And then lastly, we'll talk a lot about Power of the Elements format, since there is a lot of speculation on which deck is going to be better between Terrelmet and Splite. And then we'll talk about if the format is going to be tier 0 or if the other decks can still compete. I'm joined by some guests today if you all want to introduce yourself.
Alright, hi, it's Andrew, aka Grim. I've been doing YouTube for like 2 years, and I competitively play Yu-Gi-Oh! And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Hey guys, I'm James. I'm Hakunamydata on YouTube. I provide data-related Yu-Gi-Oh! Content and also some Cyber Dragon content here and there. So thanks for having me.
Hello. I am Tallervision, short to Taller, and I make the YouTube videos that no one else is willing to.
I'm Jake from Yu-Gi-Oh! Replays. I traditionally made a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Replays, as you could imagine, but nowadays I do a lot of mini essays regarding different topics that are that tend to be trendy right now, and I fill them to the brim with my own special memes. So nice to be here.
Awesome. And so just before hopping into today's video, I just want to shout out my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist and Dragon Shield. Definitely go ahead and check them out if you haven't already. Links in the description below, as well as everyone's channel here. So definitely go ahead and give them a sub and check them out. But I really am interested to hop into today's conversation because, again, a lot of these topics are things that we've been hearing about for a long time. So let me just ask everyone here, what do you all think about Maxi? How do you feel about it? Were you around when it was initially in the game, or were you able to see what it did in Master Duel? We'll start with Grim.
I think I'm not going to say Maxi is fine, but also at the same time, we're kind of at the point where Yu-Gi-Oh's at a very fast-paced format. It's kind of like on your either one of the opponent's turn 2, you're probably losing, or on your turn 1, depending on their board, and you don't have the out, you're probably losing. So I think Maxi is one of those cards that, depending on the format, it could be more degenerate than others. If you're playing more in a skill-based, or if you're playing around more skill-based decks, meaning like right now we're in a format where kind of like anyone can learn 1 to 3 combos for these decks and kind of just fairly do maybe okay. But in formats where like it's more about the player's skill, then Maxi's better off. But if we're in more of like a hyper combo format, then Maxi is very bad for the game. So I think it just really depends on the format. But I do think the card, it's not good for the format, but also at the same time, it wouldn't be bad if everyone's able to play it. But things like Ash, Called By, Cross Out, it does force your deck building to kind of be a little watered down, because you're going to have to pit Called Bys, Cross Outs, and then all your utility cards to out the Maxi, and just utility cards in general. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it on that subject.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that Maxi, though, in general, is just not very healthy for the game. I was around when this was still here, and even seeing it again in Master Duel, it was fun for like a week, right? Because we haven't really been able to use it, and then we're all like, you know what, we all hate this card, but it still feels nice to resolve it, especially if you have full combo. But it is one of those cards that I just think will never end up being healthy for the game. I do believe that the game has sped up to a very fast paced, and I do understand like the logic behind saying like, yeah, we need a card that can really be able to shut that down. But at the same time, I feel like you just make a lot of the big combo decks even better, because if you have to pass because you're going to give your opponent 100 cards, a lot of the combo decks that can just kill you turn 2 don't care if you draw 100 cards because they know they're killing you. So to me, I think that Maxi is just never really going to have a good balance.
Well, so something interesting about Maxi is that, from at least from what I've seen, and I want to hear what you guys have seen, I feel like this is so polarizing, and it's like you almost have a 50-50 line, like all the time, where people, like half the people are like, we got to have it back, and then half the people saying, oh, no way, Jose, And I guess something else that I was thinking about is, Maxi could come back at a lot of times, but do we want it back when splites are on the way? That's the question, right? It's like, is now the time? Now that we can, search it out, is that the time?
Oh, it's funny that you mentioned 50-50, because like a little over a year ago, I did like a survey, and it was like 2,300 people responded, and it was, one of the question was, like, what do you think about Maxi, and like, what should it be in terms of the fate? And literally 50% said it should save ban, and the other 50% said it should be like anywhere between 1 to 3. And then in the more recent ban list prediction survey I did a couple months ago, which is more about, you know, not what you want, but what you actually predict would actually happen by Konami,
realistic
it was
stuff.
still actually 90% predicted that it would stay banned. Which I think is, and also that survey is a bit more competitive players would respond to that. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, I never played while Maxi was legal, so my input wouldn't be as valuable. My only experience with that was on Master Duel, and for me, on one hand, like playing a going second rogue deck in like Cyber Dragons, like Maxi was like wonderful. Like it was like, okay, it gave me a chance to actually play. But then the problem is, you know, like you said, like it makes the really good decks just much better, and it just gets really hard. And it's kind of like right now where if I'm going against Flunder and I'm just praying that they don't draw Shifter, I wouldn't want to have that with like Maxi, but with like every deck.
A mentality all over the place. That wouldn't be
Yeah,
fun.
it's stressful.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those cards that like it doesn't, like, it can reward bad players, but at the same time it's like it's not a very skill based card, and the faster the format is, it's almost impossible to play around the Maxi. Meaning like in older formats, you'd be able to, if your opponent Maxi'd you, you'd still have a chance to possibly win that game. And at the point of how hyper fast Yu-Gi-Oh is now, if you basically get Maxi'd and you can't push through it, then you probably lose that game anyways. So it's one of those things where like the format would have to be at a point like Splight maybe can pass the turn back, or like set up maybe a Toad under Maxi without giving their opponent too many cards. But at the same time, the format's just too fast for Maxi to just be a thing right now.
And, you know, I'd say there's like different levels of you know, like feeling bad in Yu-Gi-Oh. So like, hear me out, right? It's like, you know, if you get Ash, that's like one thing. It's like, okay, you know, and like if you get Nib, it's like, oh, you know, he had the Nib, okay, right? It's like when you get Maxi'd, or if we, you know, we look into like history here, like recently with like Order, or if we go back to 2014, some of you may have been playing like Vanity's Emptiness. Dude, that is not, like, that just feels so awful, you know? And I think that definitely should be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, well, the issue with having like insane one-ups though is that they basically get put in decks that like mainly you wouldn't put in outs for. So like if Imperial Order was at 3, then it'd make more sense to have outs for it for those matchups. Like combo decks would be siding 3 Order to play around Droplets and Dark Ruler, so like there's more preparation for cards like that. But when they're one-ups, you're really not going to be siding cards in like that for your opponent.
You can't really like spare the deck space for that to go after a bunch of like sacky one-ofs. Like, what are we? We're gonna side around Pankratops now?
I believe that there's so many cards in this game that just need to be either 0 or 3, and like the one-of conversation is always something that I'm like, how is this at 1? You know, like if it was that broken to put the 1, it should just be banned. But when it comes to Maxi, just listening to what everyone's saying too, it's just like it's one of those cards that just it should not just be in the game, you know, because even if you give your opponent like 2 or 3 cards, it's still like a massive swing and card advantage.
Detrimental. These formats have just been too fast, and there's too many like insane one card combo things you can do. I don't know if Maxi is just at a point where if it did come back, it wouldn't be very healthy for the competitive player base. It does make like all the like rogue decks a little bit better because it does give them a chance. But then
the good decks just get to draw Maxi.
Yeah, so like you have to. It's like kind of like if your opponent, like if you apply pressure on your opponent's board, you break through their board, but then you get Nibiru after. It's kind of the same thing as basically trying to deal with their board, but then you get Maxi'd. So like it makes it so like there's 0 probability that you can win that game at that point. So I mean, probably not a good idea, but you know, I've said that about some of the cards that Konami came out with, and we still have them, so I mean...
It's kind of the same thing about the siding thing like Mystic Mind too, right? It's like, we were talking about having cards like this in the combo decks, is like, the fact that you can't really play around it, if they're siding like 3 Mystic Mind too, like, you just kind of lose to it if they're playing like Drytron to have that in, because you're not really siding it back or out, so...
So the issue with Mystic Mind, though, is that it's not that it's an always good card, it's only good, for example, for like YCS Hartford, it was pretty much only good for that event because nobody respected the card, so they complained about it. But now that it happened and people wanted to play Mind after that, Mystic Mind hasn't been so good since then because now people are more prepared for it in their main decks. So I think Mystic Mind is one of those cards that it's pretty good card, but I think most of the time when people are activating Mind, they're not really decking their opponent out unless it's them from not deck building better. And I'm not saying they should not side or like keep back removal in, obviously, like, in their deck building, but they should play decks that possibly have, like, outs already built into their strategy. So, like, for my deck, I was playing Circle. I don't think a lot of people were playing it there, but I just wanted to have it out just in case I got Mystic Mind, which I did, and it was fine. But I think, like, strategy-wise, it's not even that you have a main deck out for mine, but you have some kind of insurance policy in your deck where you can out a Floodgate, mine, or anything of the sort. So, I don't know. But mine's a good card, but it's only good when no one's prepared for it.
It's my favorite draw spell.
Yeah, no, that is true. You know, I think what's been very interesting is as of recently, and I would say by recently, I mean maybe like this year, is I've started to view Mystic Mind as not this kind of like stall annoying card, but more as actually just like a card that can eat the first interruption. You know what I mean? Like, let's eat that first Barone, let's eat that first Hot Red. You know what I mean? And it's like a little stepping stone, right? And then if your deck can actually like sort of function, like if you're on a striker, right? Or back when DP was ever, you know, that's kind of just icing on the cake. But I really do like seeing it as that first way to break a board.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about the Punk combo, though, is if you do activate mine, Hot Red doesn't stop it, and Regulus doesn't stop it, even if they... Apparently, I'm sure you guys know the ruling, but obviously if you attempt to negate with the Regulus, like, it's still going to stay on board for continuous field spell. So if you activate mine, they can do that, but they're probably not outing it. They can out it if they play Wonder Magician, but that's also, like, if they can get that far. No, they can't, because... Oh, if they Hot Red negate, and then Hulk on Wonder Magician, then they can possibly pop it. But it really depends on how you hold your mind. Like, you can bait the Hulk first. If you're playing a combo deck, they'll probably... First thing you activate, they'll activate the Hulk and then do the Wonder Magician combo, and then you check your mind.
So when it comes to cards like Maxi, though, specifically Maxi, how do we feel? What are the closing thoughts on Maxi?
Coming back, don't just like... If it has to come back, don't do it to like 1, then 2. We don't want formats full of sacky 1-uhs or anything. Cue the Scarlet song. If it's coming back, just bring it to 3.
I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, if they did bring it back to 1 or 3, I don't know. Like, the format's already pretty insane. But if they want to spice it up a little bit, why not? But at the same time, it's insane card. But we also have tons of insane cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! So
and lots more coming.
Yeah, like in my opinion, you know, I swear I bounce back nonstop because like I'll hear someone's like really good argument, and I'll be like, oh, you know, maybe they're right. No, maybe he's right. Currently, especially with Splay coming out, you know, I say no. I say no right now. Maybe we circle back to this, and just by me saying that, probably increases the chance that they'll just do it to spite me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, hey, you never know, man. But I would hope not.
So, follow-up question. What is one change that you want to see on the upcoming ban list?
Hit the Adventure Engine, I think. I mean, they can't... I think what they might do is they might put him to 2 and 2. That's one thing. And then I think Hulk, to be honest. Like, I think it's Hulk's time to go.
But yeah, so I guess, you know, to answer Gigi's question, you know, I think a lot of the sort of like textbook sort of expected answers, like some of the ones that like Andrew said, you know, I'm totally on board. One of like the crazy ones I feel like 2 people have like thought about. Okay, hear me out. Infernity Archfiend.
That'd be interesting.
Dude, it's such a fun card, and it enables a lot of fun combos. So, you know, I'm always game for that. But realistically, I think we're gonna get a lot of those, you know, textbook ones like, oh, water here, Hulk down, you know, like that kind of stuff, right?
Confused. Are we talking about cards we want taken off or cards added?
Just a change to the ban list.
So, like,
change. Okay.
That opens it up a bit.
I want Spellbook of Judgment to 1.
I mean, I don't know what I want at this point. I think even if I wanted Heart Porter to 1, I'd get bored of the deck in like a week. Probably a day, to be honest. I don't know.
So true. So true.
Yeah, I do think those Dark World Structure deck coming out, I think there's going to be some fun things to do with that. So they might bring back the dangers up a little bit.
That'd be cool.
We got 3 Nessie. We could give 2 Suits or 2 Jackalopes or whatever, but that deck looks really fun.
All right, so closing the Maxi chapter and into our current format, State of the Game. We have 2 very interesting engines now in the game, both out of the same set, one being the Adventure Engine, one being the Punk Engine. When the set was first announced, nobody cared about the Punk cards. and everyone's just like, oh, it's all about the Brave engine. This is like the best thing. It's game changing. It's crazy. And then halfway through the format, everyone's like, yo, these Punk cards though. So how do we feel about the format right now? How do we feel about the variety of decks that we have available to us? And going into Nats, how do you feel about going to Nats right now? Do you feel confident? Do you feel prepared? Or do you feel like there's way too much going on in the format?
So I'm confident with my strategy for Nats, but I think the issue with the format is that everyone thinks these decks are good, but they're like all tier 2. We're literally in a tier 2 format. Most of these decks, what makes a good tier 1 deck is that it has recursive. You're able to grind with it. You have resource management, and most of these decks do not have that. Unless you're playing the Librarian combo in the Punk Adventure deck, you run out of cards. If you do get stopped, you have no grind game. So I do see people splashing the Eldritch Engine now to try to like give it some pace or tempo, but other than that, like most of these decks don't really have good resource management, and I'd say the Punk Adventure deck's very glass ceiling. It's one of those decks though that rewards if you play it well, but obviously it's one of those things where if you skip a step or do one misplay, you're probably losing that game. But the Scythe combo is not enough in that deck to actually win. But other than that, I just see Pile, Dragon Adventure, Punk Adventure, the ABC deck I don't really take seriously. Sword Soul, Death Speed is still good, but the issue with the deck is it doesn't play enough utility cards to stop the heavier combo decks. And if you don't have the outside, you're probably getting Scythe and then you're losing. So I think the state of game's at a point where we're just all playing tier 2 decks that we don't really have anything else better to play at the moment. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I actually like the format. I think it's pretty good. I would say, like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just really don't like Flunder. But other than that deck, I always feel that whatever deck I'm facing, it's like a fair matchup. It doesn't feel too oppressive. Like I feel like I have a good shot. But with Flunder, you know, if they draw a shifter or like they activate Featherstorm, like I'm probably not winning. So that is like the only deck I would prefer not to face. But anything other than that, I think they've been pretty fair to me.
Well, I am personally very terrible at making my side deck, and I like it when there are fewer decks in the meta that are viable, so the work is done for me. Now I actually have to like look at the deck I'm playing and like, I don't know, slot stuff in. I don't know. I like most of the decks right now, but honestly, I don't really have a huge problem with any current deck. Just make less of them. Just make a couple fewer to deal with.
See, that's kind of tough, right? Because it's like when there's like 20 decks like there are right now, where it feels like you can take your favorite deck, pick your second favorite deck, throw them at the wall, and like it sticks, you know. Right. You start to hear people say, "Oh, we need less decks in the format. We need less decks, right?" And then you go to that 2-deck format, that 3-deck format, and people are like, "Man, where did all the decks go? I wanted 20 decks," you know. And yeah, no, I mean it's pretty crazy right now because like I think Andrew was referencing, you know, you have some of these like top dogs, right? Like I would call them. You have like the Sword, you have your Branded, you have your Punk, P.U.N.K, whatever you want to call it, right? So like in my eyes, this is kind of a weird analogy, right? But you have like the adult table where you have like those 3, maybe 4, and then you have this kids table, right? Like you know you have those big family gatherings.
The Weenie Hut Juniors.
Sure, you have like 20 kids, and they're just throwing like mud, they're throwing crayons, like bread, like you know, it just. You can play whatever you want, and some people love that, and some people don't. So
I personally am on the side of things where my favorite format of all time is Eternal format, and dealing even with like a triangle format in general, I think is very fun, and it's something that I think really does reward good deck building and even better siding. Even though there's a few different decks you have to worry about and that there's not many other decks that can compete as well, I still feel like it makes your mirror matches all about more skill, and then the match that you really have to win because that one's just like your worst matchup, like for example Eternal, whenever you're playing Striker into like Thunder and you really have to find a way to beat that deck, I think that it's just that much more rewarding because you already know that you should be losing that matchup, but then you have another matchup that's a bit more free for your deck. So for me, I think that format is a bit more skillful, whereas whenever there's 20 different decks, it's just almost impossible to get ready for things like Nats. And that's why I'm still unsure about Nats so far in my list on my side, because you have to accept that you're just going to lose to certain matchups if you put a lot of cards in your side to beat other ones, because you can't account for everything.
Of what Gigi said, where it's like, if you have to sit there in your deck builder, and literally just accept like, oh, I lose these 2, that's an awful feeling, you know what I mean? Because like you're referencing, when you have that sort of structure to the format, you really aren't conceding like much at all. Like you don't have to say, oh, I'm gonna win these two, but I'll lose this one. No, like you generally have a game plan for each one of those, and I totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know that's kind of the format that we're in right now. I personally really like the engine thing that we have going on. I think that that's really cool because like usually we just have like a deck, right? So that's fine, but whenever we're getting like all, even like the newer 60 card Sangan Eldritch pile like P's, I think that's so cool, right? Like you just have so many different engines that can go crazy, and that's actually what led to my top in Detroit as well, was building like the 60 card striker pile with 4 different engines on it. And I think that that's one thing about the format that I really enjoy and I really do love, is the fact that you can just kind of throw a lot together and make it in a way where cards like Small World that just came into our game can really be utilized. And I think that that's really smart and that's really cool. So it's definitely given the game a little bit more of an interesting feel to me lately.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about the pile decks, though, is that if you want to have therapeutic deck building, you don't want to play a deck that has 10 garnets in it. So the issue with that, you can play 60 cards, but you still play so many garnets. Then if you make it 45, then you're playing 10 garnets, and none of them do pretty much anything in your hand. If you don't, they're kind of missing pieces that you need to keep in deck. So that's, I think that's one of the issues with the format, where it does have a high ceiling when the combo resolves, but all the decks are playing a fair amount of hand traps, plus it plays a fair amount of garnets. So in a longer tournament, you are going to have issues with seeing garnets through Swiss or possibly Top Cut, if you can get to Top Cut with a deck. I think it's one of those decks where, like, I don't know, I think it's like, it's skillful, but at the same time I think you get lucky by not bricking with it, like, most of the time, if you do make it that far, just because there's too many garnets, to be honest.
I would have to agree. Because so there's several things in the format too where, like, if Hulk was banned right now, this format wouldn't be like a thing, because every single deck right now leans on Hulk so hard, because if Hulk goes off and it resolves and they summon Red Rose, they win. I'm very convinced that if you summon Red Rose, you're just winning that game, unless your opponent literally has like Nibiru plus Gamma. But like beside that, if you have a hand trap now in this format, it turns into a combo extender to like get into Hulk and whatnot too, which is pretty interesting. I don't really know how I feel about having this type of format, but I really feel like the biggest answer to it is quite literally just banning Hulk. But that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, maybe I just have low standards, but as long as, you know, it's not a format where, like, for example, like, when it involves like hand ripping, you know, like Infernoble, and for a brief moment Dragon Link at that point as well, or like a VFD kind of thing where you just can't play at all, like, as long as it's not like that, I'm totally okay with it. And then I don't know, and it's funny because, like, I find a lot of times when people ask about like their favorite format, it's like the Eternal or Toss format comes up a lot. But I swear at that time, people were complaining about that format too, because they're like, oh, there's so much salad, or there's Striker engine and everything, you know, like Striker Orcus and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting once you go past that format and then you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, you know what, I really liked it. But yeah, so something I noticed.
I think it's very hard for a format to be 100% agreed upon as like an amazing format.
Oh, it's impossible.
Like there's always gonna be somebody upset about the format, so like it's kind of hard to say it, but everyone will end up picking their own that they really do enjoy. That's why we're seeing a really big rise in things like Edison as well. So I think that's pretty cool. I like playing a lot of the older formats, especially now more than ever, because like whenever the format gets stale, then you can just go back and start playing those too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I think older formats are like really cool when you're in the mood for it. The thing that I've noticed with like older formats, and it's like the clear sort of drawback, is that, you know, it's for the most part it's been like solved, you know, and then you'll have these people in the comments like, well, I discovered this in Go, and it's like, okay, dude, like I got it, right? But you know, for the most part it's solved, and I think when you're playing current, you just have that sort of like, I don't know what the word I would use to describe it, but that sort of like aura of just, you know, my opponent could be on that thing, I don't know, but yeah, right? It just leaves a little like spice in there, you know. I kind of like that.
I can dig that. That's a positive aspect to it.
Yeah, we definitely saw a couple things even at the YCS on the stream that people were playing certain cards, and I'm like, whoa, they're playing that. Like it is very exciting whenever you're in a format like this where people will just pull cards out of nowhere, you know, and then you're like, whoa, that card, that's been in the game for forever, but I forgot about it.
I actually I ran into one of these a couple days ago because I was looking into Dinomorphia.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys, and I don't believe you know this, Ferret Flames. It's essentially evenly matched for Dinomorphia, but it's like it's actually like a going first card. So essentially, it's like, as you guys probably know, Dinomorphia, you want to get your life points to look like a gas price where it's like 275. You know, it's like, so what Fair Flame says, it's a normal trap, so like you could trap check it out technically. Your opponent has to make the choice to put shuffle monsters back into their deck until the total attack of their mons on board is less than your life points. So if you're at like 500, it's going back, you know? Like, but just, you know, making those discoveries, so much fun.
Yeah, there's definitely a few. Like, even in next format, a lot of people are already buying out deck Devi, so like that's pretty cool too.
I'm looking forward to being in a format with, like, we were talking earlier about like drawing 10 garnets in your pile deck is just like going to end up happening a lot once you start reaching the top cut. But I am looking forward to that. Like, even if they are like really oppressive decks that end up not being popular, like not fun to play against, at least they're not bricking 500 times. I don't care how bad the format is, as long as I'm not bricking. I want to lose because it was my fault.
That is the way of the new decks currently. If you've ever played the Punk Adventure deck, then you know what we're talking about here. It's
well, so I guess going off that, it's like, you know, it's kind of funny with the wording, because like I totally hear you, man. It's like, you know, you feel like it's not your fault, and then I've had those moments where I'm sitting there with like in some Avalons you have to play a lot of bricks, right? And you'll open up a hand and be like, man, this deck is so bad, like I have all these bricks, and then you have that realization that, you know, I was the one who put these cards in here. Yeah. And you're just like, oh man.
There is a lot of talk of our current format, but there's even more talk right now of the next format. So this is going to be the Power of the Elements Splight versus Trollment format with a splash of Exorcister. And we really shall see which one is going to be the better deck. As of right now, from what I've seen in the OCG, because I follow that very closely to get a good idea of what our format's going to look like, the fact that the Splate deck was one of the most undisputed best decks of that format, and then toward the end, before Toad got banned, Terralment started winning more tournaments. So I don't know what that's going to transfer to in our format. I think that at the beginning, Splite is going to be the better deck, but I think that after a little while, we might end up seeing Terralment take over. What are your guys' thoughts?
Splite's definitely got like a bit of a, it has much clearer combo lines in tier, because like you gotta choose what to shuffle back, and you're dealing with the well, they are good mills. We have lots of good cards to mill now. It still is the variable of that, so it's gonna take a much more skilled pilot to be able to take advantage of what they get off of that. But Splite's just grab your twos and have a good time.
Yeah, the Terralment deck has a new card that just came out of Difo as well, called Supreme Sea Mare. And it's Foolish. It's a monster that you can just roll in Foolish and then get directly to a Terralment. And then they have another one that also does the same thing as well. So, like, it removes a lot of the variables from the deck, and you can go for more defined plays. There is still going to be a lot of the variables on the mills, but, like, there is still a lot of cool plays that you can do that are, like, more linear than random.
Other past formats were, like, there's 1-card combos or 1 to 2. It's going to be one of those decks that's able to fit a lot of utility cards, so, like, you can afford to lose die rolls and still be very comfortable with your deck at that point. Just because like the engine's like only like, it's probably less than 20 cards, but you basically got like 20 to 22 cards to like do whatever you want with. So that's going to be a good thing, but that's also kind of bad with deck building right now, where like you have to water wash your decks with a bunch of hand traps or things like that.
You know, I was looking at the OCG stuff too, because it is honestly pretty important, because you just kind of get to see a little prediction of what's going to be coming down the road. And from what I saw, it's like Splite was really dominant at first, but then once you get those Jizu cards, so the ones that are like milling 5, like just because you like took a breath or you took a sip of water and you mill another 5, right? It's like, you know, I really think that is what's going to push it over, because once those cards dropped, Chalmans immediately stopped looking like this little 12%, and then it went up to like 20, 30%, right? Yeah. And I think once we get those, I think it's going to be scary.
I'm scared of those cards.
Yeah, because they give you a lot of opportunity to do some really neat plays in the deck too, with the fact that they're also a level 4 Earth, being able to mill things like Recover and go into Nat Beast is pretty cool. So there's definitely a couple lines of play that I've been seeing with those cards and what you can splash in. The fact that you can go wind up potentially turn 0 as well is kind of cracked. They have one that you can like reveal in your hand if your opponent does something, and then you mill 3 cards. So if you had a Shadal, crazy. For what a lot of people don't realize is that we were supposed to get the Misty Rune cards for Nats, but now they're going to be releasing around this format. Do we think that the Misty Rune cards are going to be really heavy in this format, or are they going to get outshined by these two decks?
I think the Misty Rune deck is going to be a really good splash engine, but also at the same time, I do think the engine's... I don't think it really stops the impact on the other two, just because the play style of the Misty Rune deck is it kind of makes it kind of like playing against like Trickstar, you know, like it makes it very uncomfortable to like play your deck, just because so many like decks need pieces either in their deck or they have to add them to their hand. So I think like how those cards work, it still makes playing against it kind of weird. So I mean, I still think the deck's gonna be good when it comes. I think all three are gonna be good. It's just gonna really depend on how the format shifts plus the ban list coming out.
I'm definitely ready for the format though. I think that the format's gonna be a lot of fun. I think that it's gonna be definitely something that will take over, but I still think some of our decks right now, like Dragon never dies, right? I think that a lot more people are going to stop playing it in favor of the other decks, but I still think that definitely like Dragon, like your one of D, like these decks are still going to be around and still being able to top, because I think that you also got to look at OCG's ban list when these cards are out. Like Gamma's at 1. Like being able to Gamma before the Gigantic is going to be huge as well, and being able to like shut down the deck, because Split is a deck that's very much so like Adamantipator, where like if they don't have a 2 on the board, they literally cannot play the game. So like if you have any effect that like Book of Moons or clears the 2 immediately, Split cannot play the game. So that's something that's really important to note, and like it's not going to be the deck that is going to be the craziest thing. I think that it's definitely going to be good, but I don't think it's going to be tier 0 by any means.
I also think, depending on what happens to the ban list, like, most decks can probably just play through Double Toad. Like,
we're keeping the Toad, right? Like, we don't think it's actually going to get hit?
Not yet. They're not. They messed with it way too much when the Master Rule changed. They immediately, like, went Toad to 1, Buster to 1, before the Master Rule even started. So I don't think they're going to, like, mess with the Toad again.
Toad's been all over the place on the list.
Yeah. So you know, one of these ideas that I've sort of had that I think they're going to do. I hope they don't, but it's kind of my prediction that they will, based on their previous track record. Is I really think they're going to be releasing these archetypes like Splite, Talent, and then say, hey, you like old guys like Sword Soul, Branded, who are already maybe struggling to keep up. They might just kick them while they're already down. You know what I mean? Like that's not the most unrealistic thing.
I feel like we've seen that before.
I could see that.
I mean, Despia's cards are like way more insane than Sword Soul cards. Like they could hit a Shuna to 1 to be very impactful, but other than that, like it's kind of like Salmon Great, where like you can't really like ban the archetype. They can hit like Gazelle or whatever, so they can hit like Emergence, Moye. Shuna is probably the best one to probably hit.
A Shuna 1 would be fine, but like it's not even something that really needs to be done, but it's still like people are gonna want something for Sword Soul. I mean, like I think that the new format is gonna be definitely something that a lot of people are already gearing up for. Like I said earlier, like deck dev is getting put out already. I think that it's really cool to note that like Chaos Hunter is really good against Sploit, and then you can use things like Soul Drain against Terralment, which is actually insane. So there are some pretty cool cards for the format already that people have in mind, and I think that we're a bit more prepared for it than the OCG was, because like if you ever get a deck just kind of dropped on you and you got to figure it out, it's better whenever you can like look at what's going on and then just apply it to your game state when you get it. So I think that's just going to be an overall very different format for us than it was for them.
Yeah, like I do think it's like Splite's a really good deck. I just think like some decks can just outplay Double Toad, but they also they have hand traps on top of it. I think it's like it's one of those decks I kind of play like pure Zoo, like back in the day. Like I don't know. Like,
yeah, no, like I heard one of my friends sort of compare it to this Tri Brigade Zoo 2.0, and I'm like, oh man, here we go again.
Consider that. I think those Tri Zoo when it first came out. Not when it first came out, but after we obviously got Almond and the other cards, like I think they were just playing Furgit then. Or you're still playing Almond. What changed about the Zoo deck when you got Bear Bloom? That's why.
Yeah, I was gonna say
we needed the one card.
That was the piece.
Because like when Tri-Brigade stuff first came out, like people weren't really running the package at the beginning. I was like, oh, I mean, this looks like it'll eventually be really good, and then I mean, it was crazy. Spite's definitely interesting. I mean, I don't know too much about all the new archetypes, but I mean, I was personally testing like Splite with like Cyber Dragons because core's a level 2, and then like for example like a Nova would revive the core, and then you can just start doing your Splite Link plays. So it's kind of interesting. Obviously, it's better to play it like optimal way, but it provides, I guess, maybe for some rogue decks out there.
You know what I think is actually hilarious about this next format though? So Grim keeps mentioning Double Toad. You know what else Double Toad? One singular Saki Call by the Grave.
Or cherries. You can just cherries Toad, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cherries.
What do they make if they're locked into 2s?
You have, it's actually really cool. They have one, it's an XC level 2 that is a like just an XC's form of Zeke, which is kind of neat. They have a lot of accessibility to Zeus. There's like the Sky Centuria.
I know that, but I'm saying when Spike goes first and you go cherries and you cherries the Toad, what do they make?
Yeah, like there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot that they can do with that.
They can E-Telly, not actually E-Telly, but their quick play Rhoda, they can do that into like a monster negate or a spell or trap negate.
Yeah, it's,
but I do think
also
that
have quick
deck's not
play
very
spell for,
very
like,
good
damage.
against traps. It's the Rhoda's a quick play. The
yeah,
special-
it is.
Sorry, so I'm considering Rhoda like it would either specials it or adds it, but yeah, it's just E-Telly, but there's not any restrictions to it. I don't think, unless it gets destroyed at end phase. I can't remember, but
It does
that
two
usually
lock
doesn't
you,
matter.
but
Yeah, I think it locks you to level 2s, and then they have that other quick play spell where it's like you can like banish,
Yeah, Smashers.
but you can also choose to like I think revive a Therian from grave.
or a
Something like
Spriggans
that.
from deck. I was summoning that Sargus day 0.
Yeah, I'm like, why are they all related? Like,
But no, so circling back here to what Hakunamydata said about like him like trying out with like cyber dragons and whatnot. So I'm assuming that's because you really like cyber dragons, right? But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how people try to get creative with it. Obviously, they kind of have time right now, but from my experience, I feel like it really takes the set to actually come out to get all of the people working on it on DB at 2 in the morning, testing and whatnot, right? And I'm very excited to see where it goes. Maybe I shouldn't be excited because maybe some people are really toxic, but I definitely think there's a good chance that the splate that we are expecting to see on day 1 is very different from what we see on like day 30, for example.
Yeah, I think that day 1, there's like a lot of people right now who are really focused on Nats and they don't really care about this yet, which is understandable. It's 110% like be focused on Nats, I get it. But then this is going to come out day 1 and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard, especially for those who have been playing the deck for a long time online. I think that it's going to be really strong, but it's going to get solved. And I don't know, because like the board, it's the same thing as like post side. Dark Ruler is crazy, like they put up double toad and you're just like Dark Ruler question mark, and then the deck doesn't have a whole lot. I've been testing this deck a lot, so it's one thing where sometimes you want to keep that set quick play E-Telly, or you keep the Smasher set just so you don't like auto lose to Dark Ruler. But that card is very real this format.
Yeah, I think Dark Ruler. It makes it fair though, is that no matter what, Shooting Risers either going to send Token Collector or Snow. So technically, like they need a good hand plus the Dark Ruler to make the comeback. But yeah, like you're playing Sword, Dark Rulers. You need another card plus that to out the Token Collector as well. Plus the hand trap, so like that's one thing there. You got to kind of play through a lot going second.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny because a lot of people haven't really noticed, but like the Brave engine is kind of inexistent right on the OCG, but like all you need to do with these splites is normal summon like a Dew Frog and they can all special summon, so like you can play the Adventure engine and put up a negate. So like there are some cool things that we can still do that the OCG just does not have the ability to do right now because all their stuff is like really limited on the ban list. So it's gonna be different.
Light Adventure, but I don't know if it works that well though.
The Gigantic only locks you into 2s after you use it. It's not like for a turn.
So weird. It's probably it might be a thing though. It's just weird, but. We in TCG for sure like to make things pretty degenerate, so it might become an actual deck.
Yeah, just things to think about. Anyone have any closing thoughts on the new upcoming format?
I'm going to play a deck that's not ever going to win, and I'm going to enjoy it more than I do this format.
That's actually a good point though, because I feel like in some of these tougher formats, where it's maybe a bit more restrictive on which decks you can choose from, it sort of like gives this like fun challenge, like can I win with X deck, right? And I'm sure that's a challenge that maybe some of us will be embarking on. I forgot my first point, but yeah, I think that will be a ton of fun. Oh no, I do remember. I think most people are kind of satisfied with the format. But then, like, some people will counter that and say, well, it's very healthy, but these decks we have seen for a very long time, therefore, I'm not having fun anymore. and you know, they're very excited for Splite, and they're excited for Tiamat, whatever you call it, right? And I would just say be careful what you wish for, you know, because you might just get it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time, you know. A lot of different decks to think about that are gonna end up being just a couple decks. So that's why I said earlier too. It's gonna be like Splite, Terrelment, and like a splash of Extra Sister. So we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me today. It's been a great time. I again have never done a collab with everyone before, so I think that it's you know, it was a really fun time, and I'm glad to have you all on the channel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. It's a great time.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, have a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video.